You laugh when I was tearing down all the stuff when we would go to Masters Men and here. Every week I'd stand before it to try to remember what to do, even though I do it twice a week. And I know none of you have that issue. One thing, so, we spent the last several weeks on the Sermon on the Mount, okay? And that was good. That was a good study. Jesus went up on the mount and did his teaching and all that. And so this week we've got Jesus coming down off the mount. We're in chapter 8 as we go along. But one thing that I challenged people to do, and I don't know if anybody did it about 3 weeks ago, was to read the Sermon on the Mount each day. Use that for your Bible reading, for 3-4 weeks, just to get so comfortable with what's happening on the Sermon on the Mount. Like I say, I don't know if anybody did it, but that's fine. I have another challenge. Is that, because somebody presented this to me, and I thought it was interesting. Solomon was declared by God as the wisest man to ever be. Now, we see where God gave him the wisdom. God promised him the wisdom. He said, because Abraham, didn't ask for anything for himself when God said, ask me. And he asked for his people and, just for that. And God said, because he didn't ask for himself, I am giving him the wisdom. And someplace else in King, these are both in First Kings, it says he's the wisest man on earth. So if you've got, that doesn't mean he always applied it, the wisdom that he was given. But if you got the wisest man who's ever lived, what if he wrote that wisdom down in a book? I thought, can't hear me? Is this not working? You know what? I wonder, did we bypass this speaker? Testing. Can you hear that? I don't hear it very well. I'll try to talk loud enough. Anyway, for all those who can't hear, sit up front. Anyway, so what's the book Solomon wrote? Proverbs. And you think you got the wisest man in the world. Shouldn't we read him every day? I mean, you think about it. You got to have the guy's wildest wisdom, And Proverbs, this is really cool, is 31 chapters. Yep. You could read one chapter a day and read in addition to whatever else you're reading. And every day you could read through the book of Proverbs in a month. You could read through the book of Proverbs 12 times in a year to learn from the wisest man there was, or at least the one who God promised to give the wisdom, to give the wisdom to. Let me just read one quick thing out of Proverbs, if I remember where it was. I hear that thing. The introduction or the first chapter, in the beginning verses, he saith. That's really good. The first 7 verses, he says, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom, this is the purpose of writing it, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. And then it goes on, because the rest of chapter 1, giving the purpose. But the idea is that it's there for a reason. So anyway, that's my challenge on that. So we are in Matthew chapter 8, and we're going to see, I guess I read it. If y'all turn to chapter 8, and read along. Follow the bouncing ball. Hey, that'd be a good way to do it. Put it on the screen with the old bouncing ball. Yeah. So he comes down from the mountain, okay? Jesus comes down from the mountain. He says, when he came down from the mountain, that's how I knew he came down from the mountain, great crowds followed him. And behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a proof to them. So we'll begin with that. What I've got on your handout is, as we go through, it's actually chapters 8 through 10. We'll cover this over a couple of weeks. But Jesus he spent all that time. You got to remember, he went through his baptism in John chapter 3, and God said, my son, who I am well pleased. He was taken out into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, and he defeated the devil out in the wilderness. And then he went up on the mountain with his disciples, and he gave his great teachings, known as the Sermon on the Mount. And that was 3 chapters worth. And so now he's coming down. See, I don't think Jesus does anything without a purpose. I don't think he's just got that out of the way. Let's go down, we'll stop at Del Taco on the way and get, and we'll get something. And, that he is setting out step by step to do things. So what I've got there is at the top of your page is the power of the king. And these are the things that we're going to see in these, these chapters coming up. So he's got healings. He talks to people about leaving everything to follow Christ. He calms the sea. We got the story about the demons being cast out of the people, but being cast out into the pigs. We'll see that in beginning of chapter 9, he's got the power to forgive sin. We see where he'll call Matthew. We're going to spend most of the time just on the healings and miracles, and not all the stories necessarily. Talks about fasting and feasting. He talks about more healings, and then the selecting of the 12 apostles. But then we see the actual miracles, and I've got them listed there, where he heals a leopard, which we just saw. Not a leopard. Leopard would be, get rid of my spots, He's going to heal the centurion's servant. He's going to heal Peter's mother-in-law. This is how we know the first pope was married, right? You don't get a mother-in-law without, being married. He's going to calm the storm. He's going to heal the 2 men with demons. He's going to heal and forgive a paralytic. He's going to heal a sick woman. He's going to raise a girl from the dead. He's going to heal 2 blind men, and he's going to heal a mute, demon-possessed man. So here he's got, this is why I say Matthew is writing. I think Matthew writes with a purpose. He puts these things all together in a storyline to make a point. And we'll see that he says after some of these healings, this was done to fulfill what was said in the prophets. So, Matthew has set this up. So Matthew he's got 10 different deeds here that I just read, and 10's the divine number of completeness. Okay? I've got written there the whole enchilada. Everything right there is Jesus showing his power, his authority, why he came. We may not understand it. The people there may not have understood it, but Jesus is going through it. Remember, God's complete judgment against Pharaoh was 10 plagues because of his unbelief. God's complete will for your life is in the 10 commandments. You ever want to know what the will of God is for your life? They're right there in the Ten Commandments. Have no other gods. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. Don't make graven images. Don't do this. Don't, honor your mother and your father. Don't murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't. Forget the last couple. But anyway, but there's 10 of them there. It's 10. It could have been more. There's 613 laws that are given within the first 5 books of Moses. But we talk about the 10 commandments, the 10 written by the finger of God, on the stone, were the 10. And so that 10 is significant. Anyway, so it shows the completeness. Page 2, and for those of you, I print the large print, I couldn't make this any better. So you have to get out your microscope and read it. But these are the 24, the numbers vary, okay? It depends how people count the healings. There's like 37 miracles that Jesus does, and there's like 24 healings. And these are what's listed. It doesn't necessarily mean that's all there are. And John says that's at the bottom of that chart where John says, and there are also many other things that Jesus did, which if they were written one by one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. That's a lot of stuff. Amen. I got an amen. No, that's a lot of stuff. John's using a bit of hyperbole, there, but it's the idea. You can't count and you don't know, and we can't even write them all. We can't even write them all down. So anyway, so we read about the leper, okay? Let me see. I'm getting too much on my thing here. On my table. Hang on. So then he came down, he healed the leper. And it says that, well, first of all, everybody knows who Jesus is. That's the thing. He comes down. I don't know how long he was on the mount for. I mean, maybe it was just the better part of a day. Maybe he was up there for a week. Who knows? But he comes down, but they know who he is. This leper knows enough to say, I bet this guy can heal me. And what does he said? And behold, the leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, Lord. So these people know, the Pharisees knew who Jesus was. They didn't like who he was. Nobody in the Bible ever questioned the healings of Jesus. Nobody in the Bible said, that guy's lying. He never healed anybody, And they didn't like that he did it on the Sabbath. They didn't like that necessarily that maybe he was showing them up when they said, well, you're doing it in the name of the devil, Beelzebub. In case anybody's looking for kids' names.
I just watched that on
use your microphone.
I just watched that on TV, The Chosen, just this particular man at the pool, but when he healed that man, there were 4 of the Jewish people standing there in their black robes watching and talking back and forth about, look what he's doing this. Today is the Sabbath, or did I get that wrong? Today is, he can't be doing it. That was the big thing they hung their hat on. Right then. Big thing that flashed on.
Did they put that at the pool of Bethesda when he was helping the guy into the? Yeah. This brings up a question. I probably have it later in my notes. But why did Jesus heal people? I'm sorry?
He was the Son of God, and that's for people to believe.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that could be. I mean, I'm sure it is, but I don't know if the people, I mean, when somebody came running up to Jesus because he saw his buddy get healed, I don't know if he knows that it's because he's the Son of God. Joe.
He showed compassion. He had compassion for people, and it wasn't false, it was real. I mean, he cried at Lazarus, to
Yeah,
And it did show his power, but it also showed his love and compassion.
yeah. Yeah. Well, see, here's the thing, is that, and this is why the pool of Bethesda, everybody here know the story of the pool of Bethesda? You know, is that the pool there, that the waters would, it'd be like somebody turned the jacuzzi on once a day. And the waters would rise and bubble up, and whoever got in got healed. Okay, probably like going to, you know, those hot springs or
That's about
something like that. But there's this guy who can't get in. Okay, every time he goes, I guess the quota, I don't know if the quota was one or whatever the quota was, but by the time he crawled over there, you think he'd plan ahead a little bit, but. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, but he couldn't get in, therefore he could never get healed. Jesus knows this. So Jesus goes in and heals the guy. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank. I don't know if he threw him in the water or just healed him.
just healed.
Just healed, okay. Yeah, but here's the thing. Why didn't Jesus heal everybody there? I always picture Jesus, I know I get thrown in the heretic category, but I always picture Jesus stepping over people. Or crippled, you get to the one guy, and then he turns around and steps back over the people. Now, because it doesn't say, you know, but here was my point. Hang on a second, Larka. Here's my point, is that Jesus had a purpose in healing that guy. Okay? And well, let me take Larka. What's that? Well, they may, I don't know. You know, I mean, we don't know because it doesn't, you know, because it doesn't say. You know, anybody watch Benny Hinn on TV? You can admit it, Benny Hinn? No? Yeah, he's a faith healer on TV. Yeah. Pardon? Yeah, anyway, but he'll take his jacket off, you know, he wears the white suit and all that. Takes his jacket off and he waves it across the crowd that's on the stage and everybody falls down. Jesus could have done that. You know? But he didn't. Okay, that's what I'm saying. He's doing these things for, you know, for a purpose. So, so just think how difficult it was for the leper to come up to Jesus to get a healing. Because when Moses came down from the mountain and he had the law, what did it say for lepers to do? Flee, don't be in contact with anybody. And that's what these guys grew up with for 1,500 years. So what is it that makes him come to Jesus when he's been told all of his life to stay separated from Jesus? You know, because he knows who Jesus is.
In that movie, the Chosen, where Jesus cures the man that was in Bethesda, they tie it in that he was the brother of Simon the Zealot, and Simon the Zealot was there to kill somebody else. So when he cured him, he went and made contact with Simon the Zealot and basically converted him.
He foiled the assassination.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do that when you're making a movie.
Hold on.
Yeah, no, you can do that when you're making a movie. Not like that. I understand it. I mean, I don't know, you know, I've never watched The Chosen. I've watched some clips of it on, you know, YouTube and that. Do they put any kind of a disclaimer up? Not a disclaimer, but something that says, hey, you know, we may have taken a little bit of liberty here, but read your Bible. Did you say, yeah, they do? Oh, do they? Okay. No. That's,
They're not afraid of,
huh?
they're not afraid of reading the Bible.
No. I'm saying, do they say something like that or put some, okay, that's good. I mean, that's good because some people, I'm sure, take it as that's the story. You know, even though it's two, three verses in the Bible, and now they've made an hour out of it. You know, you gotta use some filler when when you do that. So like I say, if they say, hey, make sure you read your Bible. Oh my goodness.
Referred to as literary
I'm sorry.
license.
Wait, who said? Oh, what'd you say?
It's referred to as literary license.
No, and people do that, and it's normal. You have to. I mean, somebody writes an 800-page book, I mean, just on anything, and then you go see the movie, and it's an hour and 40 minutes. They either took a lot out, or they, whatever they do. So he says, so he asks him. So again, this guy, has faith that Jesus can see. And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, which is a no-no. And he said, I will be cleaned, and immediately his leprosy left. Here's the one thing. Jesus said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a proof of them that you're healed. So Jesus isn't going to mess with the system that they have there, because it's the priest that's supposed to do the cleansing. So he's saying, don't tell anyone. Now, hey, if I healed someone, what?
In the miracle that he tells people, don't tell anything. Well, come on. It's like, this is an incredible feeling.
If I got healed like that, or if I was a healing person, I'd want to be on the Today Show tomorrow,
You would be.
Yeah, really. No, I would be, but that's not what, that's not the way Jesus does it. And that's why I think that everybody kind of leaves kind of scratching their head. They know what they saw. They like what they saw. They even know sometimes, yeah, that was prophesied. But then they still walk away going, what the heck happened? Or what did he mean? Or even though it's right there in front. So Jesus is showing that he's got that power over, over disease, but like I say, Moses had been telling these people, don't approach people, hide from people. What are you supposed to do? We're walking down the road and there's somebody with leprosy coming, they're supposed to say unclean, unclean, and they're supposed to jump off the road and, do those things. So, anybody else? Oh, Ray.
I had a question. All these miracles that you have listed here, are all these people he cured all Jewish? Or were some of those?
Yeah, because the next one we're going to read is the centurion's daughter or servant. I forget which one. Yeah. And even when we're going to see, what was that?
Are we sure that the centurion's servant was not Jewish?
Well, I guess we're not, but he's doing it at the request of the centurion. It's the centurion's faith. It's not the servant's faith.
Right.
Yeah. So we don't, but we'll see when he goes to the Gadarenes, across the, across the river in the east. That's where the unclean people lived. When he cast the demons out of people, he's going to where he has to go. Like I say, I clean this category of people, I clean this category of people, I heal this one, I do this one. He's doing it so that you can see that completeness, that nobody's out of the reach of Jesus. Because if you go back to the Old Testament prophets, they prophesied about stuff like this.
Well, the other thing was that John, when he was in prison, he sent those two individuals to ask Jesus, are you Messiah, or is there somebody else to come? And he says, tell John that I'm healing the sick,
Yeah, doing all those things that Isaiah had talked about. And there's also two views on why John sent them. Had John's faith crashed, and he wanted them to, since he was in prison, he couldn't go. He wanted them to go, hey, check this out. I don't know if we're doing this right. Or did he know that if he told his disciples about Jesus, they would only have a surface, understanding, but if he sent them and they talked to Jesus personally, it would be, a more valuable thing. Andy?
You keep things kind of under your hat. When you step up to the sea, as Moses with the staff in your hand, and you part the water all the way across. Pretty hard to be quiet about.
I think my battery is slow.
So here your battery running low.
No.
Plug in the power.
That's on. Well, I'm having all kinds of things here. I got that plugged in.
Or lit up.
Yeah. It looks like that to me. I don't know.
Says it's on. Does it show battery charging? No, it shows battery in trouble. This thing's cold. It's like it's not.
Is it plugged in here in the front? Oop,
There it goes.
plugged
Now
in.
it's charging.
Okay,
This wasn't plugged in all along.
okay. We need the devil cast out of this Zoom system. Who here wants to play the role of Jesus and handle it?
Water.
Okay, Andy. Okay, wait, we gotta interrupt. Andy, why don't you grab the microphone or somebody handle my, let me give him another microphone. Okay. Oop.
How we doing now? I can talk. Wooden staff and produced it. They marked the entire sea for all the Egyptians to see what happened. It's hard to keep it on your head. It's how powerful he was.
Well, and they didn't keep it under their hat, and they weren't commanded to keep the miracles of Moses a secret. In fact, they were commanded to tell their children and their children the stories every year, because they were an oral community. There was no writing, and that's how they passed it down from one generation to the other. That's why. What's that?
You're talking about the Hebrews, not the Egyptians.
Well, the Egyptians all drowned.
Yeah.
So, so they didn't have a hat to keep it under.
He was wet.
Yeah. Joe.
Yeah, I think that he was wanting it kept quiet because he knew just how much disturbance was going to cause. And he said at least twice, it is not my time yet. He did it at when he turned the water to wine and another time.
Right.
So he was trying to set the timeline for when it would all occur.
Right. Yeah. He knew that if he's going through and he's doing healing after healing after healing, and word did get out, but he traveled. So, you got to understand, they're not the community that we are. And this is the trouble that we have in understanding a lot of times, is we know if something happens. Ever since the advent of like CNN and 24-hour news, well, we got to remember when the first Gulf War started, that was, I think, the first time you could watch war live 24 hours a day. So if something happens at this table here, okay? And say that the table on the other side, say that's 40 miles away, walking like that. Nobody's going to go over to that table and tell them, hey, you'll never guess what we saw. They'll tell everybody around the table. So when Jesus gets to this table, they haven't heard the story. They don't. That's why they're always amazed. But today it would be, oh yeah, we heard it. That's yesterday's news. We heard about that already. You know, and so we don't understand it because we think that everything happens is just boom, boom, boom. And I think I said this once, you know, in the book of Acts, I think there are, my number may be high, 30 miracles. Okay. Maybe not even that many. I forget my numbers now, but whatever the number is, we think, because people will say, why don't we see the miracles like they saw in the book of Acts? Book of Acts covers 30 years. You know, I mean, that's a long time. What was 30 years ago? 1994. You know, just think, I forget the number. Maybe there's only 10 miracles. I have to
That was a
double.
lifetime hero, wasn't it?
What's that?
But those lifetimes were out of 30 years.
Well, no, yeah, even if the lifetime was 30, I was 40 or 50 years old, it's still, yeah, in someone's life. But say, Ray, look it up on your computer. How many miracles in the book of Acts? But anyway, it's not that fun. But we think there's so many. Because we read it. You can read the book of Acts in an afternoon, all 28 chapters, you know? You can read it and go, wow, look at all those miracles. If only we had those miracles, if only we had those healings. But you realize it's just over a 30-year period. So we miss that kind of stuff when we read. Anyway, so it says in verse 5, it says, when he entered Capernaum, a centurion came forward to him and appealing to him. You know, and see, this is just like the leper. You wouldn't think Jesus would have anything to do with the centurion. He's a Roman. I'm a Jew. I might be God, but I'm a Jew. And we don't hang with those, you know, unclean people. But then again, the centurion felt comfortable coming up to Jesus. Here you got this peasant itinerant preacher, and I am a centurion. I'm not going to go bow down before that guy and ask a favor of him. But he knew who Jesus was. So he says, Lord, again, with the Lord. He says, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. And I said to him, and he said to him, I will come and heal him. So again, it's an appeal for someone else this time. You know, people just know that it's Jesus' will to come and to heal. You know, he's breaking down the barriers. You know, the thing that we don't see is what was the attitude of the centurion afterwards, not just immediately afterwards, but like for the rest of his life, how he dealt with Jewish people, you know, the people of the land. Was it any difference? He says, but the centurion, he said, I will come to him, I will come and heal him. And the centurion replied, Lord, I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority with soldiers under me, and I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it. So he's saying that, you know, you're doing this just like giving a command, you know, for doing it. So let's see. You know, and centurions are tough. I mean, they were tough. Anybody here in the military? Go through basic training? Was your drill sergeant pretty tough?
Yes.
You gonna say something, Joe?
Yeah, when I read this, I look at it a little differently in the sense that he didn't address Jesus as rabbi, teacher. He addressed him as Lord.
Yeah.
Which tends to show that he had some serious consideration about who Jesus was. And then the second aspect that shows that is he said, for I too am a man under authority, recognizing Jesus had authority.
Yeah.
Okay. Both of those tend to indicate he was a man of faith.
Yeah, you don't know, some of these people, you don't know as they, if they're Romans and they're serving in, the Holy Land, what rubs off on them. In the book of Acts, Cornelius, was a Roman. But he came to faith. He came to the Jewish faith, which led him to the Jesus faith, where he's asking questions. And then the Lord spoke to Peter and said, hey, we got one on the hook over here. Go talk to him, like that. And he converted. So you don't know what that influence is, especially the influence of God and his people over foreigners. We see that in the book of Daniel. All the Hebrews got taken into Babylon. Babylon's a pretty tough country. Like that, but they settled in, they raised their families, they became part of the community, and the people became somewhat friendly to them. But advanced to the nativity scene, where'd the wise men come from? Where'd the wise guys come from? Not Italy, no, not those wise. Pardon?
East.
Yeah, they came from the east. They were probably Persians. They probably came from Babylon. After 500 years of living with the Jews in their land, they knew something. They were influenced by them. We should hope that we're that kind of influence on a community. So they may not have fully understood it. I think I've said this before. Up until the Islamic Revolution in 1979, there was a huge Jewish population in Iran. There was probably more Jews in Iran than there were in Israel. I mean, just a huge population. They all got chased out at the time, but they were there from the time of the Babylonian captivity. Those are pretty old people, huh? Yeah, no, they were there. So you see that. So we don't know the status of that centurion. He may have been, ready to answer an altar call. You never can tell. When Jesus, we're in verse 10, when Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, he says, truly, I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. Now, I wonder who's following him. Then he's referencing who followed him. Is he talking about his disciples? Those he said to those who followed him, he's saying, I haven't found anybody in Israel that has this faith. That includes you guys. So again, and it was something that Larica had said about whether or not the people had faith, like around the pool, the other people. Maybe Jesus has this way of sensing that. I don't know. But he sensed it by his words. So let's see. He says, I tell you, in verse 11, I tell you, many will come from east and west and recline at a table with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. So why is he dealing with the centurion? He's gone to the Gentiles. He's just saying, we got this, it's like the dragnet talks about in one of the parables. Man, I'm just scooping up everybody I can. So he says, while the son, he says, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into outer darkness. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So what he's saying, now remember, he's talking about to the people who followed him. He's probably just kind of giving them a heads up, better pay attention, better be a little bit more, have your faith increase like this centurion, that even though you, whether you're speaking to the disciples or just general followers, he says, while you, the sons of the kingdom, the ones who the kingdom was made for, are going to be cast out. And the centurion said, and to the centurion, Jesus said, go, let it be done for as you have believed. And the servant was healed at that very moment. So what do we get out of the story?
Jesus rocks.
Jesus rocks. There you go. You know, that's, that's probably as good a way as any to say it, is that Jesus is doing all of these things. Like I said, I think he's going in an order, at least Matthew has set it up that way. So in verse 14, oh, Joe.
Yeah, it's really kind of an implication that even the apostles didn't get it yet.
Yeah.
In fact, they didn't get it until after his resurrection. And then all of a sudden, it's like, wow, what he says will be done.
Right.
Okay, and the centurion here is basically telling him, what you say will be done, and I believe. What faith?
Yeah. The and even Jesus' enemies, most of the times, Jesus' enemies got it. They understood. They just didn't like it. I mean, they just didn't like it. And people do that today. You can give them all the best witnessing or make the best case for the existence of God and Jesus as his son, and people just say no, just because it's not because they don't believe, it's because they don't want to believe.
It interferes with my lifestyle.
It interferes with my lifestyle. It interferes with my own rational mind, like that. But it's not because they can't believe. It's just that they choose not to. Right.
So in my interpretation, it's that the disciples were confused or maybe absorbing too much knowledge at one time. I mean, they try to keep Jesus from curing the woman that was bleeding, and they also try to keep the kids away from him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, he rebuked them.
They didn't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like I say, they're just like, anyone else. It says, okay, we'll do this last. Well, let's see how far we go. In verse 14, it says, and when Jesus entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she rose and began to serve him. That evening they brought to him many who were oppressed by demons, and he cast out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick. Okay. Here's the thing we already said. So Peter had a mother-in-law, which means Peter was, married. We don't hear anything about his wife, I mean, maybe she traveled with them, you don't know. Or maybe she dumped him because he's gone crazy and he follows this, cult leader.
It's because you don't watch The Chosen. You
Yeah.
know all about it.
Okay, use your,
Brothers.
use your microphone so that we all know.
So the Chosen embellishes that Peter's wife or brothers, Peter's fist fighting with her brothers, there's all kinds of.
Yeah.
It's not from the Bible.
No. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. I mean, it's just not from but that's what I was saying earlier. As long as they're clear, then I guess that's fine because it gets people interested. I mean, I'm sure there's people that watch it that go, I didn't know any of that, the true parts or the false parts. I didn't know any of that. Let me go read for myself. And that's a good thing. So, pardon? What's that? Well, that's why I think that he healed the mother-in-law. They showed up and it's like, boom. I don't smell anything in the oven. And they go, well, mom's under the weather. I'll fix that. Hey, if the Chosen can do it, I can do it, right? Yeah. Like, what's his name? Jethro on CSI, he's always smack him in the back of it. Yeah. This way, hey, think about it. I mean, I don't need a show of hands, but I mean, how many people read the Bible? And it's right there in red and white, black and white, red and white, and you don't get it. You know what the words say? You could repeat the story. Yeah, it said, story said this. And then they go, what'd that mean though? I don't know.
Intellect comes in many flavors.
The what?
Intellect
Oh,
comes in many flavors.
stupid, more stupid, very stupid.
Oh,
That's like that thing that I brought up to your attention this morning about that thing that was posted on Facebook, is that success is having your name in the book of life, and whoa, success.
Yeah, you know, because, and I told Ray, you know, the meme on Facebook, it said, you know, success is having your name written in the book of life. And I know what they mean. I mean, you know, you know, how much can you fit on a meme this, you know, this big? But again, it leaves people with the idea that I got to do something to be successful, to get my name written in the book of life. You know, we said that a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about beware the false prophets. You'll know them by their fruits. And then people will stop and think, wait a minute, there's my to-do list for the day. I have to produce good fruits. I have to be a good tree. I don't want to produce bad fruit. I don't want to be a bad tree. So starting today, I'm going to be a good tree. I'm going to produce good fruit. And it doesn't work that way. You know, and that's why the last time I was here, I brought up the parable of the barren fig tree to clarify that. No fruit, bad tree, God wants to wipe you out. Vine dresser comes along, Jesus. Okay, vine dresser comes along and says, give me a year, let me work the tree. You know, and he digs around it and fertilizes it and waters it and, you know, goes to the gardening store and buys some other stuff to do it, because he said if after a year, you know, if it doesn't produce the fruit, you can destroy it, which shows that it's Jesus doing the work, you know, in us. So. Okay, so anyway, so it says that evening, so this is after he healed her and she made them some, you know, dinner and all that, because it says, and she rose and began to serve him. Now you think that would have impressed the apostles. Hey, that's good, we get to eat. It says that evening they brought to him many who were oppressed by demons, and he cast out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick. See, now this is kind of a counter to him just healing the one guy at the pool of Bethesda. But see here, this is a healing or a miracle. Well, casting demons out would be a miracle. I guess it's a healing too. And whoever's sick, it gets so there, but we have no idea how many people. So you can't say, well, yeah, you healed this person, this person, this person. You're counting on your fingers. But then you got here, it may have been 100 people, may have been 10 people. We don't know how many people were outside the house. But the thing was, it says that he healed them all. Okay, so we know that Jesus can, you know, heal them all. And see, here's the thing: when you read the sermons, when you read the stories about the healings, or you read the stories about the other miracles, I think there's 37 miracles, 24 of the, you know, 24 healings. I think there's 4 times we see demons being cast out. You read those stories, they're like mini sermons, because they're telling you who Jesus is and what he can do. Yeah, so I hear that rumbling around. And then in verse 17, he says, this was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. He took our illnesses and bore our diseases. You know, again, this is talking about the atonement. This is talking about what happened on the cross, because it's not just our illness and our sin, or our illness, what did it say? Our illness and disease, it's our sin. And you see that in other places that he's, you know, where he says, your sins are forgiven. Which is it easier for me to say? You know, your sins are forgiven, or stand up and grab your mat and walk. So it's Jesus conquering sin. So Jesus is the servant, the suffering servant who does, the downward service. You'd have to read Isaiah 54, 53, 53, 54, 55, in there where he talks about the suffering, the suffering servant. So, did I see a question? Just having a flash from a stroke. Okay, well, let's stop there, because then we'll pick up at verse 18. Need to mark this. That's fine. Yeah,
We, at the beginning of our session here today, why did you do this? There are several places in the Bible where he speaks, he says, like the Martha, he says, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? And he does it, he says that a couple of times later on in John. It was there, but that today was the day that people will see the glory of God.
Yeah.
That's why one of the reasons he did this stuff. And by the way, Lazarus laid it for 4 days in rock, that people would see the glory of God.
yeah, no, it was for that idea that he knew that they wouldn't understand, but it was for later for them to understand. So when he rises from the dead, because you gotta remember, when he got crucified, they all ran. There he had total non-belief, there. And then when he rose from the dead and when he ascended back into heaven, now all of a sudden it came to them. It came to them to the point where, remember, Peter denied him 3 times after seeing all this stuff. Okay, Peter denied him 3 times. Peter ran, when they did the crucifixion. A couple of chapters later, in chapter 2 of the book of Acts, we see him giving the great, Pentecost sermon. So something between when he denied Jesus and ran in chapter 2 of Acts, something big happened. So that will be the rest of the story. Let me end the recording here. Oops, didn't want to do that. Yeah, let me do that. Let me do this.